The power of the human mind lies not in controlling the external world, but in understanding what is happening within us. As long as thoughts are taken for truths, they silently govern us. When they are observed, they lose their hold. Observing does not mean fighting or trying to eliminate what appears. It means recognizing thoughts for what they are, ephemeral movements, not definitions of the self. From then on, a subtle freedom takes hold. The mind ceases to be a place of permanent tension and becomes a space of clarity. This inner power does not eliminate challenges, but it transforms the way we approach them. It allows us to act without getting lost in reaction, to evolve without denying ourselves. Perhaps then, true strength does not consist in becoming someone else, but in fully encountering ourselves without masks, in this conscious presence that was already there. If this is your first time here, subscribe because you probably won't see this channel again if you don't subscribe. If the video resonates with you, like, share, comment, to help others discover this path. Welcome to this space of clarity. Ladies and gentlemen, even before your body moves, even before a conscious decision is made, something is already in motion within you. A subtle activity, almost imperceptible but constant. A silent mechanism that never truly sleeps. A thought appears, then another, effortlessly, without invitation. The human mind functions like a permanent translator. It takes what you see, what you hear, what you feel, and instantly assigns meaning to it. Good or bad, useful or dangerous, important or insignificant. Everything is filtered, classified, interpreted. Even in stillness it works. Even in silence it speaks. And most of the time you don't even notice its presence. You live through it as if its comments were reality itself. As if this inner voice held a form of absolute authority. But take a moment. Really listen to it. Is it always right? Is it always benevolent? Or is it merely repeating old learned, inherited, and conditioned patterns? There's something strange about blindly trusting a stream of thoughts that you haven't consciously chosen. As if the tool had taken the place of the master. As if the observer had become confused with what it observes. And this is precisely where a deeper, almost unsettling question arises. If this voice interprets the world for you, how much of your reality truly belongs to it? And how much begins the moment you change your perspective? Reality is not what you think it is. When an event occurs in your life, it seems obvious to think that this event carries its own weight, its own burden, its own impact. Yet, psychology reveals a very different mechanism. The facts taken in isolation are neutral. They are not accompanied by a predefined emotional label. It is the mind that is responsible for assigning one to them. Two individuals can experience the same ordeal, hear the same words, lose the same thing. Externally, the scene is identical. Internally, everything changes. One sees an unbearable injustice, the other a challenge to overcome. One withdraws into themselves, the other adapts. The difference lies not in what happens, but in the meaning attributed to what happens. At every moment, your mind constructs a narrative. It connects the present to your past, to your beliefs, to your fears, to your expectations. This narrative becomes your lived reality. And the more it is repeated, the truer, more solid, and undeniable it seems. Yet, this is just one interpretation among many possible ones. This mechanism is so automatic that it goes unnoticed. You don't see the story unfolding. You only perceive its emotional outcome. Anger, sadness, and frustration arise as if they were inevitable, when in reality, they are often the direct consequence of an unexamined inner dialogue. And this is where something subtly begins to crack. If suffering arises from a particular interpretation of reality, then changing perspective doesn't mean denying the facts, but rather opening up the possibility of another way of reacting to them, a space that naturally leads to exploring the link between thoughts, emotions, and actions. The circle of thoughts, emotions, and actions. Within each of us, a subtle mechanism repeats itself constantly. A thought arises, often without warning. It triggers a feeling, sometimes mild, sometimes intense. This feeling prompts action or conversely restraint. Then the action, repeated, becomes familiar. And what is familiar eventually seems normal, almost inevitable. This process is not exceptional. It is constant. It shapes your days, your reactions, your relationships, without you needing to consciously think about it. A simple idea can color an entire moment. A quick interpretation can transform a neutral situation into a source of tension or motivation. And because this cycle is fluid and fast, it gives the impression that emotions arise on their own, as if they were imposed from the outside. Yet, between each link in this chain there is a space. A brief moment, often ignored, where observation becomes possible. Most of the time, this space is filled by the automatic reaction. The mind recognizes a familiar pattern and triggers the next step without delay. This is how habits are built, not through repeated conscious choices, but through unquestioned responses. Learning to see this cycle is already slowing down its grip. Observing a thought without immediately believing it, feeling an emotion without trying to flee from it or express it, allows you to modify the trajectory before it transforms into behavior. It is not a struggle but a gradual awareness. And the more refined this observation becomes, the more an obvious truth emerges. Certain emotions which we thought undesirable actually play a specific role, naturally paving the way for a different understanding of fear and its profound intentions. Fear is not the enemy. It is common to consider fear as something to eliminate, to silence, to overcome at all costs, as if its mere presence were a failure. Yet, this reaction reveals a profound misunderstanding of its nature. Fear did not arise to limit you but to keep you alive. It is the product of thousands of years of adaptation, a refined warning system that seeks to prevent danger even before it is clearly visible. When it manifests itself, it is not there to punish but to signal. It attracts attention, mobilizes energy, and prepares the body to react. Doubt, worry, and anxiety operate on the same principle. They are messages, not verdicts. The problem arises when these signals are mistaken for orders. When the mind confuses the warning with reality, the possibility with certainty. In this case, fear ceases to be information and becomes an authority. It dictates choices, restricts movement, and reduces the range of possibilities. Not because it is too strong, but because it is never questioned. We follow it automatically, like a voice to which we grant absolute power. Rehabilitating it does not mean encouraging it, but recognizing it for what it is. A sometimes clumsy attempt at protection. Listening to it without obeying it allows us to transform its function. It then becomes a landmark, not a prison. An indicator, not an obstacle. And when this distinction begins to take hold, another question naturally emerges. If some reactions are inherited patterns, can we learn to consciously reshape them, as we would train an underdeveloped ability? The mind does not simply react to the world, it constantly adapts to it. It transforms itself through experiences, repetitions, and mental habits maintained day after day. Nothing is fixed. What seems automatic today was, at some point, learned, often without our being fully aware of it. With each recurring thought, a path is traced. The more we travel it, the easier it becomes to navigate. Over time, certain mental pathways become so familiar that they resemble self-evident truths. They are triggered effortlessly without conscious thought, as if no alternative exists. Yet these patterns are not innate. They are the result of subtle, invisible, but constant conditioning. This is where personal development takes on another dimension. It's not about masking difficulties with optimistic phrases or forcing an artificial state of mind. Conscious thinking means noticing what repeats itself, identifying dominant patterns, and understanding their origin. This observation creates distance, a margin of maneuver, a space where choice becomes possible again. Replacing a pattern doesn't require inner violence, but rather consistency and patience. Each new response, even a subtle one, reinforces a different path. Little by little, the old automatic behavior loses its power, not because we fight against it, but because it is no longer systematically fueled. As this training takes hold, a truth becomes clearer. If the mind can be shaped by repetition, then the central question is no longer what you think, but who, within you, is capable of observing these thoughts without identifying with them, thus opening a deeper perspective on your true inner position. You are not your thoughts. There is a subtle, often overlooked moment when a realization can completely change your relationship to your mind. This moment appears when you notice a thought instead of following it. From that moment on, something becomes obvious. What observes cannot be identical to what is observed. A thought can arise, disappear, be replaced, but the one who perceives it remains. This distinction is profoundly unsettling because it challenges a long-held identification. For a long time, you have learned to define yourself through your ideas, your opinions, your inner judgments. Yet, upon closer inspection, you realize that these mental contents are constantly evolving. They change according to context, mood, and experience. What changes cannot be the essence. Between two thoughts there is a space. Brief, almost imperceptible, but real. A moment without commentary, without narration. In this space there is nothing to defend, nothing to prove. There is only a simple, silent, self-aware presence. This space doesn't need effort to exist. It is already there in the background of all mental activity. Recognizing this observer position doesn't mean rejecting thoughts, but ceasing to grant them an identity they don't possess. They become phenomena, ephemeral movements, not definitions of the self. This understanding brings a form of lightness, a discreet but profound freedom. And when this distance is established, a question naturally arises. If you are not your thoughts, where then does your true power of choice reside, and how is it expressed in the attention you give to some of them rather than others? The power of inner choice. Every day, thousands of thoughts cross the mind without asking permission. Some are fleeting, others persistent, sometimes overwhelming. Their appearance is not always voluntary, and trying to prevent them is often an illusion. Yet, there is an essential difference between a thought that arises and a thought that takes hold. The real power lies precisely at this point. Not in the ability to block what appears, but in how attention is distributed. An ignored thought often fades away on its own. A nurtured thought gains strength, clarity, and influence. Attention acts as a silent amplifier. What it focuses on tends to grow. Taking responsibility doesn't mean feeling guilty. It's not about blaming yourself for every uncomfortable thought, but about recognizing your role in what is nurtured over time. The mind learns from what is repeated, from what is revisited again and again. This mechanism explains why certain worries become persistent and why certain beliefs end up structuring an entire worldview. Choosing where to direct your attention is equivalent to guiding your inner trajectory. This choice is sometimes subtle, almost invisible, but its effects accumulate. What you observe most often becomes what you perceive as important, urgent, and real. Little by little, this focus shapes your dominant emotions, then your decisions, and finally your behaviors. When this responsibility is acknowledged without excessive judgment, a new dynamic emerges. For by understanding the power of attention, another question naturally arises. How does this repeated mental energy eventually become ingrained in the body, in automatic reactions, and in what is commonly called inner strength? Falling is not failing. There is a deeply ingrained confusion between falling and failing. As if stumbling automatically meant failure, as if personal worth diminished with each mistake. Yet, falling is part of the natural learning process. It is not a sign of inability, but a direct consequence of venturing into unknown territory. Mental strength is not measured by a perfectly linear trajectory. It is revealed in how a person reacts when they falter. In those precise moments when certainties crumble, something becomes visible. Unrealistic expectations, ignored limitations, areas of fragility that have been set aside. Each fall highlights a point that already needed to be addressed. Error, far from being a condemnation, acts as a revealer. It shows what didn't work, not to judge, but to inform. Observed honestly, without avoidance or self-blame, it becomes a valuable source of understanding. It indicates where attention was lacking, where inner listening was absent, where an automatic response took over. To humanize falling is to accept that progress includes moments of imbalance. It is to recognize that learning does not happen solely through success, but also through friction, questioning, and temporary discomfort. This perspective transforms the relationship with oneself. It replaces harshness with curiosity. And when this curiosity takes hold, a new stage naturally emerges. How to get back up without denying what has been experienced, but by fully integrating what the experience has revealed, so that the next movement is more conscious than the previous one. Getting back up consciously. Getting back up is not an act of brute force. It is neither a denial of vulnerability nor an attempt to mask what has been felt. It is a more subtle, more internal movement which begins with lucidity. To see clearly what happened, what was felt, and how the mind reacted without seeking to embellish or condemn. Clarity softens where harshness confines. It allows us to recognize our limitations without being defined by them, to admit our mistakes without transforming them into our identity. Being less hard on oneself does not mean complacency or inaction, but rather ceasing the inner struggle that exhausts more than it builds. In this space, the energy previously consumed by judgment becomes available again for adjustment and learning. Honesty plays a central role here. Not brutal honesty, but a calm sincerity, capable of looking at what is there without flinching. This self-awareness makes it possible to avoid two opposing traps: resignation, which paralyzes, and excessive self-demand, which breaks. Between the two lies a more balanced posture, where evolution becomes possible without rejecting the lived experience. Rising in full consciousness means integrating the experience instead of leaving it behind. It means allowing what has been experienced to modify the path forward, not out of fear, but out of understanding. This movement creates inner continuity, a new coherence. And as this coherence settles in, a broader question naturally arises. When we stop fighting against ourselves, what form of inner power can emerge, and how does it express itself beyond simply reacting to events? True power. For a long time, power has been associated with the idea of control. Controlling situations, results, others, sometimes even one's own image. Yet, this quest often leads to constant tension, as if something is constantly eluding us. The human mind, in its depth, does not find its strength in dominating what surrounds it, but in understanding what is happening within it. Observing one's thoughts radically changes the relationship one has with them. They continue to appear, to be commented upon, to be interpreted, but they lose their status as absolute truth. They become movements, suggestions, not commands. Consequently, the mind ceases to be an invisible cage. It becomes once again a living, open space capable of nuance and perspective. This understanding doesn't erase the challenges. It doesn't promise an existence without doubts or difficult emotions. However, it transforms the way we approach them. It's no longer necessary to fight against ourselves to move forward. It becomes possible to respond rather than react impulsively, to act without denying ourselves, to change without losing ourselves. True power doesn't impose anything. It illuminates. It reveals a stability that doesn't depend on external circumstances, but on the quality of presence we cultivate. A presence capable of embracing the experience as it is, without masks or avoidance. And in this honest encounter with ourselves, something deeply relaxes. Not the idea of becoming better, but the quiet recognition of already being whole, here and now, in this consciousness that observes, understands, and chooses. If this moment has touched you, I invite you to stay connected. Subscribe, like, and share if you feel the need. Not to support a channel, but to continue this path that we are exploring together. Each video is a space where we can breathe a little more freely. Stay with me until the end. You might find a fragment of peace, or a little light that your spirit has been longing for.